The sun rises over Moscow, glinting off the golden domes of the Kremlin. Red Square fills with tanks and soldiers, a display of Soviet power for all to see. Leaders watch from Lenin's mausoleum, their faces on giant posters, promising equality and prosperity. The crowd waves red flags, cheering as rockets roll by, symbols of security in a tense world. For many, this is a moment of pride, a nation rebuilt from war, striving for a world without rich or poor. The parade is more than spectacle. It's a celebration of the Soviet dream, yet, beneath the cheers, there's sacrifice. Money spent on weapons means simple food and small apartments at home. People know building a great nation takes patience and hard work. They believe in the future their leaders promise, so they cheer, wave their flags, and hope the dream will become real for their children. The Soviet Union was not just a country, it was an idea, one that demanded much but inspired millions. The grandeur on display masked the daily struggles, but also united people in a shared vision. Even in hardship, there was a sense of belonging to something vast and important. The Soviet dream was both a promise and a challenge. In these moments, pride and hope mingled with sacrifice and uncertainty. The world watched, and so did the people, wondering what the future would bring. The Soviet story began with dreams of unity and strength, but every dream has its cost, and so, the parade marches on. After the war, the Soviet Union faced the monumental task of rebuilding. Central planning meant leaders in Moscow decided what factories to build and what they would produce. Heavy industry, steel, coal, machines, became the backbone of the nation. The military's needs always came first, aiming to catch up with and surpass the West. Life was shaped by these plans. People were assigned jobs in new industrial cities, often far from home. Families moved into identical concrete apartment blocks, sharing kitchens and bathrooms. For many it was still an improvement, a home of their own after wartime destruction. Everyone had a job, everyone had a place to live. Daily life was structured. Wake up early, work hard, stand in line for basic goods. Shortages were common, patience a necessity. Community grew from shared hardship. Neighbors helped each other get by. Education was free, designed to create loyal, skilled citizens. Schools taught science and math, but also loyalty to the Communist Party. Children joined youth groups, wore red scarves, and pledged to be good communists. The state was like a family, caring but demanding total obedience. This was the foundation of Soviet society: work, duty, and loyalty. The system promised security, but required sacrifice. People learned to adapt, to share, and to endure. The Soviet dream was built on steel and smoke, but also on the quiet strength of its people. The cost was high, but so was the sense of purpose. In the factories and the crowded apartments, the Soviet story was written every day. The nation moved forward, one sacrifice at a time. Progress was measured in tons of steel and miles of railway, but the true measure was in the resilience of its people. This was the Soviet way. October 4th, 1957, Sputnik launches, and the world is changed. The Soviet Union reaches space first, sending a message of technological might. In America, shock and fear. In the USSR, pure pride. Yuri Gagarin's flight makes him a national hero, proof that ordinary people can achieve the extraordinary. The space race becomes a symbol of Soviet achievement and sacrifice, but this glory comes at a cost. Resources pour into rockets and weapons, leaving less for daily needs. Factories focus on military production, while citizens struggle to find basic goods. Scientists work in secret, under immense pressure. Success is celebrated, failure hidden. The nation appears powerful, but the economy strains under the weight. The stars hide growing problems on the ground. The Soviet people take pride in their achievements, but feel the pressure of constant competition. Every launch is a victory for communism, every setback a secret. The dream of space inspires, but also demands sacrifice. The world watches, and so do the people, hoping their efforts will lead to a better life. The Soviet Union's pride is real, but so are its challenges. The glory of the stars cannot erase the struggles below. The nation's achievements are remarkable, but the cost is high. In the race for greatness, the Soviet people carry the burden. Their pride is genuine, but so is their hardship. The Soviet story is written in both triumph and toil. In the Soviet Union, information was tightly controlled. Propaganda filled every corner. Radio, newspapers, movies, and giant posters. Images showed happy workers and bountiful harvests, painting an idealized Soviet life. The news supported the party's message, not reality. Pravda, the main newspaper, printed only what leaders wanted people to know. The West was portrayed as dangerous and decadent, Soviet life as heroic and just. Art and culture served the state. Writers and artists promoted communist values through socialist realism. Stories had to be positive, heroes loyal to the party. Critical or abstract art was banned, seen as a threat to control. For many, propaganda shaped their entire reality. They believed in the ideals, proud of their country and wary of outsiders. But others saw the gap between posters and daily life. Empty shelves, long lines, and unspoken doubts. This created a culture of double-think, saying the right things in public, hiding true thoughts in private. Propaganda unified but also divided. It inspired loyalty but bred quiet skepticism. The official story was powerful, but reality could not be hidden forever. The truth always finds a way through the cracks. Life in the Soviet Union was shadowed by fear, the ever-present KGB. The secret police watched for enemies everywhere, from foreign spies to citizens telling jokes. Informers could be anyone, a neighbor, a co-worker, even a friend. People learned to guard their words, never sure who was listening. Accusations of anti-Soviet behavior led to arrest, interrogation, and harsh punishment, often without trial. The threat of the Gulag, the infamous labor camps, kept people obedient. Publicly, citizens showed loyalty, attending meetings, applauding speeches, repeating slogans. Privately, in trusted company, they shared forbidden books and listened to Western radio. This quiet rebellion kept minds free, even as bodies conformed. The culture of fear stifled creativity and critical thought. It was safer to follow orders than to question. The system appeared stable but was brittle beneath the surface. It relied on force, not genuine support. Fear kept the Soviet Union together for decades but could not last forever. The desire for freedom simmered beneath the silence. The cost of obedience was high, but the hope for change endured. The Soviet story is one of both control and quiet resistance. The shadow of fear shaped every life, but even the strongest shadow cannot last forever. Change was coming. The human spirit would not be silenced. By the 1970s and 80s, the Soviet system was straining. Central planning led to constant shortages. Factories stalled, store shelves were often empty. The arms race drained resources, leaving little for consumer goods. Long lines for basics became routine. Western jeans and music were treasures on the black market. The gap between communist promises and daily reality grew. Two crises exposed the system's flaws: the war in Afghanistan and the Chernobyl disaster. The Afghan war dragged on, costing lives and money, eroding trust in leaders. Chernobyl's explosion released deadly radiation. The government hid the truth, endangering its own people. Secrecy and mismanagement shattered public trust. The system was not just inefficient, it was dangerously irresponsible. People began to question everything. The myth of infallibility was broken. The Soviet Union's foundation was cracking. The cost of silence and secrecy was now impossible to ignore. Change was inevitable. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became leader, facing a nation in crisis. He introduced perestroika, economic restructuring, and glasnost, or openness. For the first time, people could speak more freely and criticize the system. Newspapers reported on real problems: war, pollution, and past mistakes. Banned books and films resurfaced. Historians uncovered hidden truths. Political clubs formed, and people debated the country's future. Glasnost was like fresh air in a sealed room. The party's monopoly on truth was broken. Anger and frustration, long suppressed, came to the surface. In the republics, calls for independence grew louder. What began as reform became a movement for freedom. The winds of glasnost became a storm. The Soviet Union could not contain the change it had unleashed. The old order was unraveling. The future was uncertain, but the silence was over. Glasnost and perestroika failed to solve the Soviet Union's problems. Chaos and shortages only grew. The Communist Party's authority crumbled as people lost faith in the system. Nationalism surged. Republics demanded independence. The fall of the Berlin Wall inspired more to break away. In 1991, hardliners attempted a coup, but the people resisted, defending their new freedoms. The coup failed, destroying the last authority of the party. One by one, republics declared independence. On Christmas Day, 1991, Gorbachev resigned. The red Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. After 74 years, the USSR was gone. The Cold War ended not with a battle, but with the quiet collapse of an empire. The Soviet story closed not with triumph, but with resignation. The world watched as a superpower dissolved. For millions, it was the end of an era and the start of something new. The Soviet dream had ended. Its legacy would echo for generations. The hammer and sickle faded, but the questions remained. What would rise from the ashes? Decades after its collapse, the Soviet legacy is still visible. It lingers in architecture, politics, and the memories of those who lived through it. For some, there's nostalgia for stability and security, a job, a home, a place in society. The pride of Sputnik and wartime victory endures for many, but others remember fear, propaganda, and lost freedoms. The collapse brought both liberation and hardship. In new nations, the Soviet past is a warning and a lesson. The Soviet story is complex: pride and pain, achievement and failure. Its echoes shape debates about freedom, state power, and national identity. The shadow of the USSR still shapes the present. The Soviet experiment is over, but its questions remain. What is the price of security? What is the value of freedom? The world is still searching for answers.